guaranteeing there's going to be a weight of support behind him. Hello and welcome to GG Weekend Watch with myself, Kate Tracy, alongside Dave Young and Andrew Mount. A big thank you to Matty Sutcliffe for standing in for sort of my absence last week. Of course, Dave was holding the fort, though. Matty amongst the winners, as was Mr. Andrew Mount, though. So just to reiterate those winners. So he gave us Trelawn, who knuckled down to beat Jeriko at 7-2. Matty then gave a mention to Phantom of the Points, who put in a big run to finish third at 22-1. Andrew and Matty both put up Royal Pagaia at 11-4, who was also Matty's nap. Now at Ascot, Andrew fancied Martador, who SP'd at 13-8, but was a winner by a wide margin. And then back up at Haydock, Andrew closed out the show in Sale with Fontaine Clonge, 7-1 winner, just for 12 lengths. So lads, more this week, please, because we've got all the news on the agenda. Newbury and Newcastle jumpers to the fore, as we would expect. Now we're going to begin at Newbury with the 154, a 0-145 handicap hurdle, 4-year-olds and over 2 mile 4.5 furlongs. Andrew, do you want to kick us off?
Oh, why not? Welcome back, Kate.
Thanks.
Now, yeah, a tricky one. This one, we've had a lot of shock results in this race over the years. It's only been going for 8 years, and its current guys. 28-1 shot last year, 20-1 2 years ago, 14-1 3 years ago. You look at the Roll of Honour; it's all the big names still. 2 wins for Skelton, 2 for Nichols, 2 for Nicky Henderson. What a piece for Philip Hobbs and Nigel Twiston Davis. And yeah, Impose Quoi, it's probably the correct pronunciation. I did catch the eye last time out, finishing third in the Lanzarote on his final start last term. He did best of those 2 race prominently. That race was set up for the closers with the 33-1 winner, 92 second, both coming from off the pace. Mixed messages from that form, although Namir Lion in second and the 5th Serious Operator have won since. So given that he's proven when fresh, he was a winner at Cheltenham first time out last season, I thought it'd be very boring going with the favourite Impose Quoi or Nicky Henderson.
To be fair, it's 4-1 on the field, so it is wide open. So even siding with the favourite in this, it's not that unoriginal whatsoever. Impose Toi for Andrew. Dave, who'd you like?
I like a few of the horses in here, but for the purpose of this particular race, there's one that I really like. It's Lac De Constance. That Andrew touched on the fact that there's been some sort of shocky prices in here, and it's been the big yards that have won this race. Now, all the familiar names are in there. We've got Henderson, Nichols, Twiston Davis, and Skelton, but they've had the big shocks probably more recently, I'd say, the 28-1 winner last year especially. Look, it was a bit of a surprise that the price that horse went off at as well, because I think overnight before was a lot shorter. But Lac De Constance is an 8-year-old in here, and I think a few people might be dismissive of his chance because of that. But he's only had 11 starts over obstacles. I think it's 6 spins over hurdles. 3 of those came on his last 3 starts, obviously, but they were like the last 3 starts after aborting a novice chase campaign, where at one point he was favourite to beat the likes of Boot Hill. The horse clearly has bundles of ability and massively came on for his run last season. So had best part of the year break between penultimate run and the last start. But last year bumped into Crambo when Crambo was still rated 133. A couple of runs after that, the horse went and won long walk hurdle at Ascot, didn't he? So he was giving £5 away that day. Probably did still need the run, but ran okay for a horse that was bumping into one like that. Then the time after at Haydock forced the dead heat when staying on really strongly at the line. That was over 2 mile 3 furlongs. This trip of 2 mile 4.5, a bit further than both the runs he ran at the beginning of the last season. But he's a horse that does shape like he wants this little bit extra further. He doesn't want the extremes that some of the horses in this race do. Like, I think the Twiston Davis horse probably wants further than this trip. In the waterside, probably does want this trip. And I also think that Henderson's Impose 12 probably does want it, even though he's got probably his best form, at 2 miles. But it was Lac De Constance comeback run where Harry Skelton still kept a hold of this horse as they jumped the last. I don't know if the horse would have been able to pick up the winner, Pretending, who was raised £6, did get beat next time, but beaten by £6, so it wasn't the worst performance after. But the fact that this horse will step forward for the first one, as far as I'm concerned, despite the fact that he's 8, still is very unexposed. The Skeltons have done well in this race before with horses, whether they've been weak, strong, or anything in the market. I thought the top price about this horse, which was 11-1, it's gone. It still says on the race post, but it's not. It's 8-1 top price, but with 4 places up for grabs for a horse who will love this trip, will like the track, and will be staying on at the line. I just thought he looked like an absolute freebie, but I think he's got a proper chance of winning this. So Lac De Constance is pretty confident selection for me in the opener.
Oh, I can tell confidence selection. Do you say you can see 8-1 top price? I've still got with one firm here, 11s.
Yeah, that was Bet365, but they've changed now. So
Have they
gone to
just changed?
Etalon.
I refreshed my page to see
You
it.
had
It
2
still
quid
says
on,
it.
Dave.
I did
I
have
was
two
going to say,
pounds,
yeah.
50.
That was it. That's why it has suddenly gone, or he's trying to put everyone else away for now then. But yeah, it was 11 to 1. It's been backed in and Lac De Constance confidence selection in that opening contest for us anyway, for Dave. Right, Newcastle now for the 210. The Grade 1 fighting fifth hurdle, 4-year-olds and over 2 miles. Now, of course, we don't get to see Constitution Hill in this. His super sub, Sir Gino, taking his place, even money heading the way, but Mystical Power, who will now be wearing the Rich Richie colours because of the multiple ownership that he has, will be sporting the pink and green this time at 6 to 4, Dave.
Yeah, it's a really good race now, because I'm not don't want to say unfortunately, but potentially with Constitution coming here, Constitution Hill, if he had have come here, it would have put a few horses off of the fact of coming here. I know some connections would like to be in the same sphere as him, but we've got actually a really competitive looking race now. The key thing to remember is that Mystical Power and Sir Gino, that are taking up a massive chunk of the market, are both now stepping into open company. Mystical Power was maybe not an unlucky loser in the Supreme, but ran with massive credit to come second. Like, it was almost as good a performance as winning the race. Then obviously duly obliged at Aintree after. Now, Sir Gino missed Cheltenham, and I was pretty strong, like in a fancy, to expect him to go and win that race. Again, we don't know until this season where that form will stand up, but got the job done at Aintree, looked good. And I would probably say that the run at Aintree, you would probably forgive him a little bit for the fact that he did miss Cheltenham, and you'd probably say it looked as good as it did because we're thinking he probably is capable of better back then, if that makes sense. So he comes in here as a 5 to 4 favourite. I do think he's not necessarily the second coming, but I think he's one of those juveniles, like an Arcona, like an Espoir de Lam, or like potentially what Sir Eric could have been, that looks like they are going to be a superstar 5-year-old. But of course, we just don't know how much time we're going to get with these horses, whether they're going to like sort of step forward in the season after. So I fully hope that Sir Gino is the next best thing since sliced bread. I think the most important thing, because we haven't really got a lot of like substantial form to go by with him, that gallop at Newbury, for whatever we want to call it as, that you could see Nico de Boinville was like disappointed after getting beaten after the gallop, but the way that they talked about it after the race almost suggests that they weren't really that surprised that Sir Gino beat Constitution Hill. And I don't think that means that they think that Constitution Hill all of a sudden is a bad horse. I think it just shows they're like, well, it's Sir Gino, of course he can keep up with Constitution Hill. So I'd see that as a big positive. I'm not going to be rowing into back him at short price. I just can't wait to sit back and watch, and I hope that he's very special.
Yeah, he almost got forgotten about in that piece of work, wasn't it? Because all of the spotlight was on the disappointment of Constitution Hill, rather than any sort of extra credit perhaps given to Sir Gino at that point. But he's definitely coming here on the back of a good racecourse gallop himself. Then even money, the second coming, says Dave. Andrew, do you concur?
No, not really.
I did tee that up, to be fair. I did tee that up like that.
I fell for it. I mean, Nicky's obviously been on the phone because they're watering at Newcastle. It's good water. He's done a John Gosden and put a bit of pressure on, I think. Interesting, he's a 4-year-old. Only 15 have run in this race since it was awarded Grade 1 status in 2004. Just one of those one that was countrywide frame for the Quins in 2012. And 11 to 4 shots, so minus £11.75 if you minus £11.25 if you bet them all. Probably should have been more winners than that based on the prices some of them went off at. So I'm sort of a little bit lukewarm for that reason, particularly with the presence of Mystical Power. 5-year-old's got a 32% strike rate in this since it was awarded Grade 1 status. You make a good profit backing them all. There's 8 winners from 25 bets, and you look at Mystical Power. 5 wins and a second in Grade 1 company at Cheltenham from 6 starts. So I won't say has done nothing wrong because he got beat once. So Frankel did nothing wrong, but any pundits out there who keep saying he's done nothing wrong when a horse hasn't got 100% record, give yourself a rollicking. But I'll go Mystical Power, the bigger price of the leading contenders over Sir Gino. But obviously, it's got a nice shape for each way betting here because we've got the 9 runners and we're talking sort of 12 to 1 bar and 40 to 1 bar 4. So if it is genuinely good ground, they don't overdo the watering. And the likes of Colonel Mustard, who's very consistent and was a close-up third at Ascot the other day, could be the one to back each way. That's 50 to 1 for the Lorna Fowler.
Big price then for that potential each way angle for Colonel Mustard. He is ever so consistent, isn't he? Quick turnaround then for him as well. But pleased that we've got some disagreement there between Sir Gino and Mystical Power for the two lads. Right, we're going to move on to the 225 at Newbury, the intermediate handicap hurdle, Premier Handicap, aka the Jerry Fielded. 4-year-olds and over 2 miles. Now, Jeriko de Reponet back over hurdles again here after that bizarre chasing debut at Sandown last time out. I mean, Andrew, are all eyes just going to be on him in the pre-parade ring now, getting saddled up, or what are we expecting from him?
Yeah, a lot of conspiracy theories sort of talking about he took so long to get to post because they hadn't laid him enough on the exchanges, and but obviously we don't subscribe to that sort of theory. Yeah, who knows? Do you want to pay 5 to 1 to find out? Probably not. Funny old race this, though. In recent years, it's been a real race for front runners. Saying that in the last 12 renewals, 6 winners made all. If you'd found, if you'd bet all 12 front runners, you'd have made a profit of £31.25 to £1 level stake. Obviously, working out who's going to make the running pre-race is not always easy, but Jeriko de Reponet, from what we saw of him over hurdles, will probably race, from off the pace. So same with Queen's Gamble, who's interested on her return for Harry Derham. The yard has gone a little bit quiet after a very sort of productive start to the year. So I was just sort of trying to play guess the front runner here, and maybe back something at a price that might be up with the pace. The one I kept coming back to was Castelfort for Jane Williams. I think she's got 2 in the race. This one's the bigger price, but Excelero does look like he's probably going to be held up the mount of David Noonan, although having jumped out to his left when winning at Market Raising, maybe he'll appreciate going this way round. So yeah, it wasn't a race I was particularly sort of keen on, but I thought maybe Castlefort each way if you can continue the good record of front rows.
20 to 1 shot to find out as well in a tricky race for Jerry Field and Dave, but we're going to do an awful lot of learning from this. Yeah,
we really are. It's interesting, especially with the horse that Andrew's mentioned there, because you've mentioned the 20 to 1 top price. There's at least 16 to 1 about as well, but as short as 7 to 1 in places. And of course, ran behind Salva, that horse is now rated 143. So there's like that horse is only like sort of single figure. So if there's going to be one that's like does come in at a price, I think Andrew's probably nailed it. It's going to be Castlefort. The Jerry Fielding typically is a pretty good race, though, isn't it? And even if we don't get the result that we're potentially expecting, in hindsight, we'll look back and say, oh, actually, they were all good horses because we know what we know about them now. Obviously, Under Control was the infamous mare last year because she was the best handicapped horse in training and unfortunately just came unstuck at Newbury. But you look at the winners, Hansard, there was a good case to be made for him. Bad ran in second. Brentford Hope for Harry Derham as well in third. They're all good horses. So you don't really get a bad winner of this race, even if it's not the most obvious. So yeah, Castlefort's definitely worth a mention. I'm sort of what you started this whole thing off with, Kate, saying there, like, do you just wait and see how we get acts in the prelims and potentially take a chance at the price? And that's the way that I do feel with Jeriko de Reponet, because plan Bs are never ideal, are they? Big Bucks were supposed to win a Hennessey, but then he went and won a few, I don't know, I can't remember what they were. Were they grade 1s over 3 miles at Cheltenham multiple times? So I'm not saying Jeriko de Reponet is going to be that sphere, but I think he had 1 season under rules, didn't he, last year, where everyone expected him to be this superstar because he was installed as supreme favourite. He was a good horse. He was running really well. The one laboured run where he beat Lump Sum didn't look as good at the time, but then Lump Sum's come out and won a Welsh National, rated 143, and he's going to be running in a fight in 5th. So there is form that's in there. And the fact that he's only 5 turning 6, having 1 year like racing on the race course, obviously the Sandown situation is a bit of a worry, but it might just be he's not as confident a horse as some of these other race horses that go to a track, and maybe he's not able to, I don't know, show his full potential just yet. But I'd be happy to write off that run and see how he is in the prelims, but I would just do that. I would wait and see how he gets on. If there's like a load of market support for him and you miss the chance to bet him and he goes off at 2 to 1 or 5 to 2, then I would leave him alone at that price, even though it would be a sign of confidence. Whereas if you left him and he was fine in the prelims and was fine going down to post, at about 4 or 5 to 1, I'd be tempted to give him another chance. I know people might say he'll either win or he'll bomb out, but I wouldn't look at him like that. I'd treat him as this is a race in isolation. He might be 9 to 2, 5 to 1, and you can get each way 4 places with 13 runners. And I think that's probably the way I'd like to play it. And then, of course, if he does a Krabilly and he drifts out to 25 to 1, then we know he's not on, but you can only have £1 on him and you might win just as much. So my heart wants to believe that Jeriko de Reponet is quite a good horse. I think there's enough form there to suggest that he's got to be better than his current mark. He's probably a 140s horse. You just wouldn't have the confidence to know what he's going to be like mentally or probably even physically at the racecourse until we see what he does when he goes to post. So you'd have to take a bit of a chance, but I think Jeriko de Reponet might end up looking like that horse in hindsight that we could say it was obvious he was going to win this.
So I'll give you two scenarios. Okay, what would you prefer if I gave you 11-2 now, knowing everything that we know right now, to back him at that, or to see the weight of support? I'm guaranteeing there's going to be a weight of support behind him. 2-1, you can back him 2-1 after that weight of support just before the off. Would you rather take the 11-2 now, or would you rather back him at 2-1?
Well, I mean, as you've guaranteed the support's coming, I'll take the 11-2 now. But I know what you mean. I'm
going to show you JP McManus's Betfair account and to see whether he's in green or red. Do you want to back him there?
If there was support behind him and I missed the price, you still got to give yourself like your own entry point. It is very individual. Like I would take the risk at him at 5-1, even if there was money behind him, and that means that it could potentially be on, and better judges than me would say that it's going to win. My personal opinion is he should be about this sort of price. So like I say, if he got backed into 2-1, I would just let him go and win if he's going to go and win, rather than think to myself, oh, I've missed the price, and then like the fear of missing out comes in and bet him. Like you don't have to bet everything that you potentially like see a case for, but you do have to make sure you're getting in at a price that you're comfortable with. So in those two scenarios, I wouldn't do either. I'm not betting him now.
No, you've got to answer.
No, I'm not betting him now, and I'm not betting him at 2-1. But if he's still 5-1 at the or in and around that, if he's bigger than say 4-1, 7-2 at the like the off, and he's been fine towards the track, then I will bet him. If he's gone off to like 25-1 at the start because he's a dirty drift, I'll still have a small bet.
I've never been so confused whether you're tipping this horse or not, Dave. What's happening?
I think Jeriko de Reponet will win this. Whether I bet him or not's the different story, I guess.
Yeah, that was, I mean, ever the diplomat, Dave. Very impressive how you've managed to circumnavigate your way around my question there of my two scenarios. But again, like in all seriousness, every horse has its price, and it is very much situationship then for these horses, when to back them. And the whole circumstances around it always factor that in. We do always preach to gamble responsibly, of course, but I thought I'd get an answer out of him to give him a couple of scenarios there, but well dealt with. It's going to be fascinating to see, isn't it? Right, we're sticking at Newbury for our next race, this time for the 3 o'clock, the Coral Gold Cup Chase Premier Handicap, the big betting heater of the weekend. 4-year-olds and over 3 mile 2, 13-2 the field in this one, Dave. So back to you, please.
Yeah, it's a crazy one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So depending on whether my dog does a wee first or a poo first, it depends on whether I have a bet in this race. No, I'm joking. Victtorino is the one that I've gone around back and forth quite a few times on whether I want to back him in this race or not. And I put him up for the Ultima at Cheltenham, which I'm hoping in hindsight was a bad thing because it was off the back of like big runs, as opposed to it being he doesn't like going this way round. Probably Cheltenham being a more undulating track than Newbury is. I think the direction he's going around will be fine. But you think back to the start of last season when he won first time up at Ascot at a big price, posted an RPI, I think it was 149, then came back and won at Ascot again, beating Yearman. Admittedly, Yearman was staying on, but he wasn't exactly out on his feet. He was raised in the weights. He put in like a 150s RPR then. Then he had the bad run at Cheltenham, which I thought was a plotty one, but it wasn't, I don't think. Then he came back to Ascot, came 4th, but he put in another high 140s RPR. His official rating's only 143 now. He was 5 turning 6 last season, so of course he's 6 turning 7 now. He's got 4 wins over fences because he's got some experience in France as well, which is a tiny bit more exposed than some of the more like recent winners, I guess. They've been sort of 2 or 3 wins in there, but I'm not going to poo-poo the horse because he's got 1 more win than potentially should have to fit the trends. And I think that Venetia knows that this horse is capable of winning a big 3 mile handicap, which is what I thought he could do when I thought of him for the Ultima. The 3 mile 2 trip, I think, will be fine for him. And I know that's all right. Gino last year hadn't run at the trip, but it is a big positive to have got experience there. Colonel Harry's trying to do the same thing as sort of Leona Mate did last year in terms of not having a run at the trip. But Victtorino, I think, has got a decent chance in here. And as much as we haven't got the deep field in terms of numbers that we sometimes get in this race, it does look a really good renewal. And sometimes you get 3 or 4 horses that are a million anyway, so they're just taking up space. So I think this looks like a pretty good renewal. And I'm going to take a chance that Victtorino can get the job done. 8-1 top price with 4 places as well. He's the type of horse that doesn't necessarily jump great, but I think he'll be staying on. So I'm sure he'll fill the frame.
Victtorino 8-1 then to show his best form, which seemingly has come at Ascot really. But away from there then, an 8-1 shot for Dave. Andrew, who do you like?
Yeah, interesting. There's only 14 runners.
Mm.
I thought my internet had frozen. It wasn't scrolling down the page when I had a full look at it because, even 5 years ago we had 24 of them.
Yeah.
Generally we get 19, 20. So it's another sad reflection on the state of British jumps racing, particularly the classy events at the moment. But that's a podcast for another time. So yeah, I've got some more favourites here. Colonel Harry is a horse who just struggles to go right-handed. He jumps out to his left. He did win right-handed over hurdles and maiden hurdle 2 years ago. But since he's gone over fences, that left-handed bias has been even more pronounced, and he jumped out to his left again, went second at Carlisle on his reappearance. Despite the obvious preference for a left-handed track, he was sent off 11-8 favourite that day. Like Dave said, he's up in trips, so you've got to take his stamina on trust. Those who want to support him will point to the point win, and that's all right. Gino not having won at the trip when successful in this race for the same connections last year. So I think he'll run a good race, but his price is covered. So his chances of covering his price are around about 6-1 or thereabouts. Victtorino, I do worry about the track. I remember being against him at Cheltenham last year on Trials Day, I think it was, when he finished 7th to Galore. Based on the fact that he doesn't seem to like going left-handed, doesn't seem to like anywhere really apart from Ascot. So again, Venetia in this time of year has got a great record, but I'll reluctantly desert him. The others I'm looking at, Remastered, I thought had a squeak, having run well in the race previously, fell in Al Dancer's race at the Badger Era at Wincanton last time, but does tend to go well at this time of year. And I say he's got previous in the race, so second to Le Milos, beating half a length a couple of years ago. But the one I'm going to come down on is my old friend Midnight River, who has a great record following a defeat. He was beaten on his comeback. 7 times he's won after immediately following a defeat from 13 outings, 3 places, a couple of falls, and a 7th. And that just massively smacked the prep last time out, didn't it? He was running over an inadequate trip, 2 miles, 3.5 furlongs. I napped him in this race last year when I still thought he was in with every chance, when falling at the 14th behind That's All Right Gino, when sent off at 10-1. This has clearly been the plan. And so with the cheap pieces gone for the first time, that's a positive angle for the yard, Dan Skelton yard. So I'll go Midnight River, and I do believe is my nap this week.
Oh, not to give it away so early, but there you go. There it is. 10-1 shot, Midnight River. I believe he's Harry Skelton's favourite horse in the yard, isn't he? So much so, he's not riding him. He's riding Gallia de la Toe. James Bone taking the ride. No room for sentiment, apparently, across the board in the horse racing industry. But Midnight River for Andrew in the Coral Gold Cup. Right. More staying chases to the 4 this time, though, up at Newcastle. Rehearsal handicap chase, Premier handicap, 4-year odds and over 2 miles 7. So, again, Andrew, staying chases to the 4, 5-1 the field this time.
Yeah, there's a slightly quirky stat regarding this race. The horses who ran between 1 and 27 days ago and 0 from 34 in the last 10 runnings of the race. The expected winners from that will be sort of around about 4 winners. And I think the top 7 in the markets all fall into that category. The other winner was at a race exactly 28 days ago, but if you sort of expand it to horses ran within the last 28 days, it's just 1 from 47 of the past 10 renewals. Should have been over 5 winners based on those. That was quite an interesting stat. But you look at those ones who've been off a bit longer, they're mostly hard to make cases for. Some scope is coming back from wind surgery for Richard Hobson. He's never had a first-time wind-up winner, 0 from 21. Anglers Crag loves Newcastle, but it goes well fresh, but this trip's massively on the short side. Never raced on good ground, so it depends, how much water they chuck on for him. He could be plodding on for a place. Blackjack Magic won the Badger Beer on last year's reappearance, missed that race this year, second on his reappearance the year before, but he does prefer softer, heavy going. And Canondo Cueto is another one who's fresher than most, but his jumping does tend to go to pot in big fields. Jet Plane's got the prominent style, but probably needs to go right, well, prefers going right-handed. 5 from his 6 wins are right-handed, and he needs it softer as well. So there's a lot of these need it softer, they need further, and they're perhaps better the other way around. So it's pretty tricky. So I kept coming back to Donny Boy, 1 nearer the head of the market. He's got a good record here, good record in November and December, 2 wins, 2 seconds, and a pulled up from 5 starts. The pulled up was followed by a long layoff and a wind operation. So there were obviously excuses that day. He only started at 5 to 2. I think that was at Kelso. So yeah, Donny Boy last race exactly 28 days ago. So see how that quirky stat stands up. But yeah, I thought maybe Anglers Crag could sneak into the place if they forget to turn the taps off.
If they forget to, we can all live in hope then at that point. Yeah, 16 to 1 about Anglers Crag, and the other horse just mentioned there, Donny Boy, 7 to 1. So a bit shorter in the betting there. Dave.
Yeah, it's a good looking race, isn't it? But the fact that Andrew's brought that stat up, like I like to look at statsy bits as well, but only if they're in my favour. So I wish Andrew hadn't said all that stuff out loud. But we obviously had the Badger Beers where Andrew napped Al Dancer. Let's get that in as many episodes as we can this season. I tipped up the Changing Man because the confidence that was coming from the yard that this horse had a nice handicap in him was like bullish, I thought. And I felt that the price that he was for that race, I could make enough of a case for him, but the confidence probably swayed me a bit more than anything. And it's not his fault that he fell, because the mistake that he made, he hit the fence, but like his action after looked like it must have hurt quite a bit. So the fact that he's having the quick turnaround hopefully means that he's in fine fettle and he'll be okay. But I think this race will probably suit him a little bit better. Like Andrew touched on, there's a few horses in here in terms of distance that probably want a bit further. There's a few that probably want not as far. And as much as they said that they think the horse has got a big handicap in him, they didn't really name check the Badger Beers as being the race to do it. Now, he is 0 from 6 over fences. I think he's unseated, or fell last time, didn't he? And then he's either unseated or made a big howler in a race before. So that's a bit of a concern. But he is like a novice going into open company now, so he's entitled to make mistakes. I'd prefer he didn't come in off the back of a fall. But then that said, who knows how close he would have got to Al Dancer. Like, Al Dancer was a ready winner, so I'm not saying he would have beaten, but you just don't know, do you, how good he was going to run. So off an unchanged mark, the fact that he's 7 to 1 for this race and he was 3 to 1 for the other one, I know it's not an ideal prep, but I just thought from a price perspective, with a few places up for grabs, if he's none the worse for that 4, which obviously he's not, because they wouldn't be running him if he was, I thought he had a bit of a chance. And then one at a bigger price that I keep toying with, and I just want to give a mention just because if he does go in, I want to say that I mentioned him, is Some Scope for Richard Hobson, owner Carl Hinchy, who was relatively well backed at Cheltenham last month. And I was a bit surprised by that because I don't really think he likes the track. Now, he's as big as 25 to 1 for this race. He's fresh from a wind up, so there's potentially like a cause or an issue what's happened to him before. And he did have a couple of good runs before that would suggest his mark of like the mid 120s was like well within his grasp. He is only a 6-year-old, and while we've got that, lots of horses that have got those recent runs which could be seen as a negative, and then we've got lots of horses at bigger prices that probably want differing ground. Some Scope looks like the type of horse that can do on anything. Newcastle would suit him a lot more than a Cheltenham would last time out. So again, from a price perspective, when he was 13 to 2 for a race last time, I didn't think he had much hope in, and he's now 25 to 1 in a race where I think he has got a bit of a squeak if he can forgive the last run, which obviously I can do, so I didn't expect him to go too well. He's definitely worth a mention at a big price. So I'll probably play the pair, but I'll play the pair each way because I'm that way inclined.
That way inclined. We can forgive you for that, definitely. 25 to 1, Some Scope, especially when you've got a price about him. And the other one for Changing Man at Sevens as well, then. So the same price as Donny Boy, who Andrew was giving a good shout out to in the rehearsal handicap chase. Right. Our final race in this section of the show is back at Newbury, the 3:35 0 to 145 handicap chase. 4-year odds and over 2 miles, 5 to 2 the field in this one. But again, we've got plenty enough runners to go at, Dave. So we've been served up some really competitive contests.
We have, yeah. I'd say this is arguably one of the most competitive in my mind. That I think you could run this a few times and you definitely wouldn't be shocked if 4, 5 or maybe even 6 of these won the race, just depending on how things pan out. But I'm hoping Andrew's going to be in agreement with me because he put up his Dairy last time that ran behind Martator. Didn't necessarily do the donkey work, but most of the racing comes in the home straight at Ascot, doesn't it? And hit the front, just got outstayed by Martator, and we saw how well handicapped that horse was last time out. He was a couple of pounds out the handicap in that race, so although he's up £2, it's effectively off the same mark. Doesn't have the claimer on top, but having Noel Houlihan's obviously not going to be seen as a negative. He's got 2 course and distance wins here as well on soft ground, so it's good to soft at the moment. Doesn't look like it's going to get any worse, but it might ride tacky, so he'll be okay with that. And as much as he is like a hold-uppy type horse, I think there's half a chance that they might look back at that run at Ascot and think if we'd have been a bit more aggressive, like earlier on, like over the last few fences, they might have been able to run the sting out of Martysaur, and he might not be able to get him. Look, we know that horse was well handicapped, so that's probably not true. I just mean I expect there to be a pretty confident ride from Miss Dairy. They're going to put him in contention at some point, try and push the button, and the sooner they do that, the better in the long home straight at Newbury. So I think his top price, I think he's 9-1 top price here, which just seems huge. I think he'll be on like a lot of people's radars. But I just want to mention a couple as well, because Imperial Saint that I napped last time out, I suggested how weak a race that was compared to the race that he ran in before, and he's up another £10 for that effort. When he was backed like he couldn't lose the race, he won like he couldn't lose the race. But as I say, it was expected. It was a pretty pants race he ran in last time. So as much as he's progressive, they won as easily as they wanted. If they wanted to hide him and they were thinking about winning more and more pots, then I think they could have saved onto a little bit with him. So I can see why he's favourite, but I do think he's either a graded animal, which I'm not sure he is, or he's going to get beat here. And then Petit Tonnerre's got an £11 pull for the penultimate run when they ran against each other in Aintree. But we know he's just a bit of a rascal, don't we? He could be rated 140s or he could be rated 104, and he'll probably just be a never near a second or third. So I sort of semi got tempted by him, but Issair Dairy, when I watched the run back again and again, just really impressed me. So yeah, I think Issair Dairy's got a proper chance in here. I'm hoping he just kicks for home soon and they don't catch him.
9-1 back over the same course and distance he previously won over on the back of his second last time out for Dave. Andrew.
Yeah, good race this. The market has been a really good guide to finding the winner. In the last 10 years, if you backed all favourites or joint favourites, you'd have found 5 winners, made a profit of £5.88. All the second favourites, you'd backed 3 of the other winners and made a profit of £3.50. And class droppers have done well also. If you back horses who ran in the class 1 last time out, this is a class 2, you'd have found 6 winners from 27 bets and made a tenner. Now, top weights who were down in class 3 wins, 2 falls from 5 bets. And that brings in Etalon here for Dan Skelton, who was quite near the head of the betting for the Halton Gold Cup at Exeter on his reappearance. Disappointed that day, raced keenly, made a couple of early errors, dropped out, finished last at 5 behind JPR1. He was well beaten the time before on his final start last season. That was in Grade 1 company at Aintree. But then the last time he dropped below graded level, he was a 9-length winner at Sandown, the Class 3 handicap chase. So I think, you know, the fact that he's unbeaten in handicap chase company, winning by a combined margin of about 60 lengths, even though one of those came in a match, I thought dropping in grade off top weight, Etalon could be the one here. Although I do respect the claims of Issair Dairy, as Dave mentioned. You know, he likes the track. He goes well fresh. Second run of the season, he should still be relatively fresh, and yeah, he could run a good race as well. But yeah, interesting race. But Etalon at 8-1, I thought was the value.
The top weight, Etalon at 8-1. But yeah, 2 horses there that really like this course and distance, Etalon and Issair Dairy, further bolstered there by Andrew for Dave's selection. Right, Andrew, I'll go back to you, please. Anything from anywhere else that took your interest?
Oh yeah, there was one actually, because I started looking at this race thinking, oh, this must be televised because it's a good race. It's the Sir Peter O'Sullivan Memorial Handicap Chase, the 1240 at Newbury, which was won last year by Inch House, the favourite, and trained by John Joe O'Neill. It was interesting to see that one rock up for Paul Nicholls. I thought, well, that's got to be significant they're running it here. But you look at Nicholls' record, the first time of asking with horses he takes over from other trainers, it's pretty poor actually. You know, you'd lose a lot of money back in the more. And over fences, since 2013, just 2 winners from 37 runners. So you know, maybe this will be a getting to know you exercise, and you could see him back here perhaps in March for the Greatwood Handicap Chase over 2.5 miles, a race that Nicholls targets. So keep them in mind for that. And again, there's quite a strong stat with this. Horses with an official rating of 135 or higher got terrible record, 1 from 51 at the last 9 renewals, and that sort of wipes out about 5 of the 11 runners, I think. And it also tends to go to a horse who comes from off the pace. And the 3 sort of qualifiers on stats were Genoa, Imperil, and Wise Guy. And I thought Nicky Henderson's Wise Guy, on his reappearance, having pulled up on his final start last year, might just be the one who could run well here.
Okay, nice. Was it a few years ago with this race where they all wore the JP colours? Was that in that race?
No, JP runs them in the Peter O'Sullivan silks, doesn't he? He runs them in different silks, and everyone gets confused with why they're not in the JP colours.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, I couldn't remember for the life of me that. Oh, that's it. Yes, that was it. I can remember there was something to do with JP in different colours in that race, and I couldn't figure out what it was for the life of me then. So thanks for that, Dave. Nicely done on the spot. Now, also potentially on the spot. Anything for anywhere else?
I do, yeah. That race that Andrew's talked about, I can't believe that's not televised either. That's a cracker. There's no price up at the moment, but Genoa was one that I had my eyes on. But if he's installed as like a short price favourite, probably leave him alone. He probably is going to be favourite, but if I could get a little like 6-1 each way about him, it's the way I'd play that one. In the French Furs Novices Hurdle, I do want to talk about this race because I've liked this race in the past, although I've got a terrible record in it, so I'm putting that one out there to start with. It's the 103 at Newcastle, but Skyjack Hijack has been a sort of phenomenon over 3 miles in good ground handicapping. This is 2 miles 6, but like you'll need to better stay to go well in here. Was declared for a Potemps qualifier earlier this week, but the ground had turned good to soft. But I think also they had one eye on what the grounds would be like at Newcastle. So while they are watering, pulled out of that midweek engagement in favour of this race. Has got a penalty for being a ready winner last time out, but there's no reason to think that this horse hasn't stopped progress or has stopped progression yet. I think this horse could be very special, and just because it's not with a fancy yard, it might get not the respect that it deserves. Probably should be favourite for the race, but Skyjack Hijack, I'm hoping, will continue the winning streak in the French Furs.
The French Furs at 103 up at Newcastle. Skyjack Hijack. Right, Dave, I'll go back to you, please, for your nap. I'm just trying to remember what it is, but reiterate.
It's Lac De Constance. Can't remember what time the race is. The 154, I'll say. It's 154 Lac De Constance for the Skeltons to go in again.
Yes, Lac De Constance. Nice price as well then for Lac De Constance. And Andrew, you've already given yours away, but just to reiterate.
Yeah, I've forgotten the name of the thing. Midnight
River.
Midnight River, the 3 o'clock at Newbury. The race formerly known as the Hennessey or Coral. I've been throwing money at the sponsorship, and there's a petition currently in Parliament. 2.5 million people have signed it saying call it the Hennessey again. And it's only a matter of time before they do. But yeah, he's got a good record following a defeat. I thought he was still travelling well when falling in the race last year. And a double figure price in the first time cheap pieces should give us a run for our money.
Harry Skelton's favourite horse, who's riding Gallia Delato. Ideal, but yes, Midnight River, though, then again at a nice price as well in the race formerly known as the Hennessey, the Coral Gold Cup. Right, that is everything from us on this week's show. So a big thank you to Andrew and to Dave for all of their hard work as per usual. A big thank you to you at home for watching. Best of luck with your bets this weekend, and we'll speak to you again next week.